is probably,
so
from
Dad
just
goes to heaven.
from just above below the Nike swoosh into Penn Football.
Yeah,
So
we got a close up.
At some point in time, that's going to happen to all of us. So we want to make sure that we have this. You have this legacy.
That's the only thing we know.
oh, and we've been interviewing the
ready-
cat.
you
We've
ready
been
to go?
interviewing the
We
cat
are
too.
good.
What's that?
We've been interviewing
Oh
the
my
cat
goodness!
too.
The cat. Yeah, the cat's been coming up on.
Keep climbing up.
Oh,
Yeah.
the cat's been coming up on the table. Oh, it's been hilarious.
All right, let me get one from over your right shoulder.
Okay.
Yeah, we are set up.
You ready to go?
Yep, we're recording.
All right. Will you hold that up, Matt?
Okay.
Excellent. Oh, you
Yeah, all right.
take her.
All right, I'll take it.
All right. Matt Geesman. All right. This is the interview that I'm looking forward to the most. Dad's the patriarch of the program. It can be intimidating, but I don't get the feeling that it ever was. Yes or no?
Well, people generally have feelings about what they expect me to talk about when I talk about my dad, but he's much more cerebral than most of the stereotypical football coaches you hear about. So when people ask me about my dad, my first thoughts are things like him hanging out with his cats at home and laying down in his underwear watching a movie with a bag of popcorn and things like that. So he's dad to me first and foremost, of course. But I think what I've always appreciated about him is that he is not just the stereotypical jock football coach. I always describe him as, I think he's somebody that would be a 5-time champion on Jeopardy given the chance. He's just well-read, he's well-spoken, he knows about everything in current events. So when we go home and talk, we talk about so many different things, and usually something about the Chicago Cubs, of course, but we end up talking about a lot of things. It's not just football all the time, and growing up, he never forced a football into my hand or my brother's hand, but of course, Tim and I were hooked at an early age, and you couldn't keep us away.
One thing that Chris tells the story, that's one of my favorite stories about you, was having to make a decision because you're getting an opportunity to start for the first time. I believe it might have been the Jamboree or something. You didn't play very well, and he had the decision. He had the conversation with you. You may not be the starting quarterback. Can you give me your side of that? I think I'm trying to paraphrase the best.
Yeah, I tell you what, my career trajectory at Penn was not written years in advance. I had to earn a lot, so I did end up starting part of my junior year at quarterback. But I tell you what, I had a really talented kid breathing down my neck, Nick Bayline, and he was a year younger than me and probably one of the great athletes in Penn history. You could have put him in any position, he would have been an all-stater. So I had my work cut out for me my senior year just to earn the job. And I felt I was pretty good and very prepared, but this kid was just a special talent. Every time he put the ball in his hands, something great happened. So I knew, I wouldn't say I had a short leash, but I knew if I didn't get the job done, there was somebody behind me perfectly capable, and we know how that turned out. He was a quarterback the next year, won state. We actually played football together at Hillsdale. He played cornerback and started multiple years at Hillsdale. So he was a special talent, and believe me, I knew that. And had a great off season. Everybody was real excited, and the Jamboree came, and I kind of laid an egg. And of course, we know we won state that year, but in real time in that Jamboree, we didn't look too good. We struggled against, St. Joe, who won state that year too. Maybe that wasn't such a terrible thing it seemed like at the time, but I struggled in Jamboree. So we had a heart-to-heart, and he basically just said that, you've got to come to practice this week for Mishawaka. I mean, right off the bat, the rival, first game of the year at home, big crowd. You struggled the week before. This is your year. It's time to rise up. So I had a great week of practice. First drive of the game came down through a touchdown pass, and we were off and running, and the rest was history. But in real time, there was a lot of angst in my mind and really in our family because, when you're the son of the coach, your whole career comes down to your senior year. And I'd say I put a lot of pressure on my dad to perform, but of course, my whole life had led up to that season, and if it didn't pan out, certainly, who knows how things play out. But fortunately, my back was against the wall. I rose to the occasion, the team rose to the occasion, and we were off and running.
Did you grow up as a man because of that moment?
It's funny you ask, because all of us around sports, we always make sports analogies and everything, but so many times in my life I've looked back to that week, and it continues to give me confidence, because whether I was 17 or 39 now, that was the most important thing in my life then, and that's all that mattered that week or that season. So to know I could do that and have, I wouldn't say pressure, but just the fact that there was the most important thing in your life could be taken away from you, and you have one more chance to make it happen, and then you do. Certainly, I think for all people that play sports can relate to that to some degree. But of course, I think that put a little hair in my chest and gave me a little bit more of a hop in my step, or a little swagger, as you would say today, to go ahead and lead that team and know that it was more or less my team as the field general.
Your dad and Dr. Spiker created a dynamic, and it's going to be a portion of the book that we'll use. It's going to be called The Penn Way. Now, as an adult at 39 and a father, and one on the way, the Penn Way is, I'm sure, a big part of what you're doing professionally. But as you were growing up, what did the Penn Way mean, and what does the Penn Way mean now?
I think, again, for me, it's a unique perspective, because that's the only way I ever knew. So it actually took me years further, once I was out of the Penn Way, to realize there were other ways. And I played football in college. Kids from all over the country convened to a whole new program, a whole new staff. You're in college, so higher expectations of how people prepare, and you do see some people have a similar mentality instilled, but most don't. A lot of kids in high school are talented or bigger or stronger, and they can kind of make it a certain length of time before they hit that wall of competition. So for me, the Penn Way growing up was an old adage. He would always say, if you don't leave your fundamentals, you never have to go back to them. And a lot of what I do day to day in my personal and professional life is about that. And what that means to me is discipline. You know there's a right way, you learn it, you practice it every day, and then you perform it every day. And he would always hate when commentators would talk about trap games and letdown games, because if you never let that be a mentality, it never is. And so that kind of goes back to that fundamentals thing, where we learn the right way, we practice it every day. There is no break, there is no layoff, there is no trap game, because you prepare for everything the same way. Not only do you prepare for how it's supposed to go, you think about how it may not go your way and prepare for that too. It may or may not ever come, but you have that adversity, and you switch that mindset and you say, okay, we prepared for that too, and you just adjust and move on. So for me, that's the Penn Way, is you always make sure you're prepared. Of course, the chips will fall where they may. You may have a bad bounce here or there, but you prepare the same way every day. You show up on time, and professionally, it's pretty clear how that translates. I mean, every day, as a professional, as a husband, as a dad, it all comes together in the same way. I mean, you show up and you be present in your relationships with your peers, your friends, your family, your colleagues, your customers, your clients. And I see that in myself and my brother, but I see that in all my best friends too. I mean, they're all upstanding citizens, people that you want as neighbors, people sit next to you in the pew, people that you count on at work, and that's the Penn Way, and that never leaves you once it's there.
You grew up in a household with another accomplished football player, and your brother Tim. So let's just discuss some of the Tim and Matt dynamics and how that kind of played itself out in your early stages of your life.
Well, we were always tied at the hip. It was probably me tying myself to his hip. So he was 4 years older than me. He was a senior at Penn when I was a freshman. So early on, we had that typical little brother, big brother relationship, and we played a lot together. We always invented little sports games around the house, or when we traveled on vacation in the pool. We'd always drag my dad into these games of, just throwing the ball around the pool, who had the most acrobatic catch, and things like that. So those are some of my most vivid memories with my brother growing up, or just those little creative bursts where it was something always athletic, something creative and fun and different. But it was also great because my dad was the PE teacher, so we always bring home, baseball bases, and we'd have a whole game going. We had batting helmets. I mean, it was pretty cool. And my brother and I were just passionate about the same things growing up. And you kind of hit this crest at a certain age. I think it was maybe when Tim went to college at Ball State. He was still playing football. And then I had joined the varsity. Of course, I was, back up a third string for a year. But once I started to mature and kind of reach that point where I was maybe getting some playing time or close to starting, he was redshirting or playing at Ball State, where it became more of a peer-to-peer brotherly relationship instead of that little brother, big brother. And that's something I cherish more than anything. Of course, he was the best man in my wedding, and we still text and talk all the time about the same things we used to. So the most meaningful transition was probably when I started playing at Penn, and he had his college career going, and we could kind of talk, man to man, or maybe young man to young man, and that's just carried through since then.
First time you put on a Penn helmet as a varsity athlete and went onto the free field or on the road, I want you to share that experience. What was that like? Who was it against? And what do you remember about that surreal moment?
Yeah, boy, if I recall right, I could have this a little off. Some of these stories kind of consolidate into kind of a composite story. But if I recall right, I can't remember if it was the first game ever, but I remember my most meaningful snaps, I believe, were my junior year, I think at East Chicago Central, and I was a backup quarterback at that time, and we built a big lead, and I remember it just being hot as all get out. It's early summer, August, and it's probably 85 and just all muggy, and it was the first time I felt in the game. I mean, you grow up on the sidelines, maybe as a sophomore you're dressing, but you're so far from the field, it's different. But that was, you're a play away from having the ball in your hands every play. And we built a big lead, and I got in the game, and what I do remember most are the first few plays, almost like out-of-body experience, because you experience something from a different angle for so many years, and when you're in it, it just feels like you're somebody else for a while. And of course, those are things like jitters and butterflies and everything, but it's just pure adrenaline and excitement too. I mean, I think that's part of it. Is just there's so much adrenaline going through your body, it's hard to that's not something you're used to. So that was a special time for me, and probably my earliest fond memory of actually contributing to a game was that same year, a few games later. I think it was against Adams at home, and I played the second half. So the game was, I would say, somewhat in doubt. I mean, we were going to win the game. We were up by a couple touchdowns, but we were just not playing our best. I don't know, you'd have to ask my dad. I guess I went in to maybe shake things up a little bit and threw a touchdown pass on my first drive, and it was kind of a deep ball, and the same thing. I threw it almost, I didn't even feel the pass. It was a deep pass, and Greg Dykes caught it in stride for a touchdown. And I just remember being so excited and everything, and I kept talking about how ugly of a throw it was, and when we got back and watched the film, it was a super tight spiral and everything, but it was just because it was such an adrenaline rush, and you're just kind of, it's like you practice so much, but when you play, you go back to your instincts. So it was just something that I didn't even know how it turned out. And then when you watch the film, it seemed pretty smooth and good throw and everything. And then once you get more experience under the lights and that big crowd, you do start to maybe play in your body a little bit more. I don't know if that's the right term, but it takes some time to get used to that, I tell you.
There are very few athletes who finish their career winning. You know, walking off winning a state championship. I've always felt that the greatest award a football player in Indiana could win is the SQ award. Because number one, your team has to be playing for a state championship, and you got to be a great student. It goes, all these applications go in front of this group of people who don't know you from Adam, and they're looking at all these leadership qualities, blah, 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 and they have to make a decision. And the decision is made before the game has even started on who's won. Mm-hmm. You were able to achieve both of those scenarios, going out and winning that. So I want you to talk about walking off the field, state champion, winning the ultimate award, and experiencing those kind of things. What was it like?
Well, first, my whole family was on the field, so of course, you know, Pops was there coaching, but my mom and brother were in the stands, and by then they were on the field. So it really, that moment felt like a culmination of so many things. I mean, when football is what puts food on the table of your family, the games take a different meaning. You know, it's people's livelihood at stake, and it's maybe a little more cutthroat now than it used to be, but for us it was all kind of fantasy growing up, and pretend, and you would kind of role play, and when you're in the moment and in the season, your senior year, and it culminates in a state championship, undefeated. To be honest with you, the SQ award at that time was kind of icing on the cake. I mean, you're just so overwhelmed with joy and, I would say, relief, but more of excitement that the story was written and the ending was exactly like you had dreamed of for so long, and then to have your family there too was so meaningful. And I remember back at Penn, I mean, our senior year, we were more than unheralded, my senior class, and most of that was deserved heading into the year. You know, freshman year, B team, I mean, we were kind of, you know, a typical Penn team, but not special. And the team ahead of us was really the one that was supposed to kind of bring it home. And a lot of us seniors experienced that our junior year of the disappointment, and were mostly under the radar heading into the senior year. Of course, the Jamboree didn't do anyone any favors for that. Maybe that threw everyone off our scent. But even really until regionals, nobody continued to take us seriously outside of the NIC. So to win, for us, it almost seemed like it was just our fans and each other and our families. It didn't really seem like a statewide phenomenon at that point, which to me made it extra special, because when outsiders aren't really paying attention to you or believe in you, or they think, okay, here's the scenario where it all falls apart, and then it doesn't, and not only does it not fall apart, but you just elevate the game that much more, and you're with your best friends and your family. I mean, you can't really do much better than that. And the SU was very meaningful to me, but it also was just kind of the cherry on top. I mean, the whole thing was kind of a blur at that point, and adding that on was great.
What's Matt Geesman's favorite Penn moment?
We may have just covered it, but you know, that's the easy one. Winning state's the easy one. I would say a favorite moment where I think we really, as a team, came into our own was probably semi-state at Carmel at home. It was kind of Portage because they were the overwhelming favorite and had almost won state the year before with all juniors, so I think they were nationally ranked. But that game was in the snow, and it was just kind of fun backyard game. It was non-traditional in any sense of the word. So we beat them, but even still, undefeated, beat a nationally ranked team. There was still questions about the validity of our success. So Carmel, of course, all that snow melted and it became all mud, but that was a big, talented team, and they came in with a lot of confidence. And I mean, I still remember our team was just kind of going that Penn way of just showing up to practice and practicing hard. I mean, we weren't fantasizing about buying shoes for the dome and all that stuff. I mean, it was really about that week. And if I remember right, we ended that first half really strong with a couple touchdowns, went into the locker room, I think with a 2-touchdown lead or something like that, maybe took the lead late, remember just a couple touchdown passes. And we were just really hyped, and we just all, at that point, believed that it was right there, and we were who we hoped we had become, and that's when it really came together. So the state's kind of the easy part, because when you win state, that's the most memorable, but I think that was maybe a crescendo where we realized what we had.
Finishing on a lighter note, what was it like for Matt Geesman to make a mistake, or if he did, on the field, and had to come over to talk to the guy wearing the headset, which is Dad, who's your offensive guy, or whatever the case may be? Do you have any funny exchanges you can share with us on that one?
Do you have some kind of beeping mechanism for the tape? My senior year was funny too, because Joe Sassano came on board for Penn, and he's become a good friend of mine, and he was just the type, he was kind of the good cop, and my dad was the bad cop. So, I mean, I'd grown up with it all my life, so I took my dad's criticism in stride. Other people would come up to me afterwards like, man, he was really tough on you, and that's just the way I expected, and I knew he wanted me to earn it and deserve it, any playing time or accolades I got. So I was okay with that, and I kind of agreed with it to an extent that that idea of nepotism just really wasn't something I wanted, a burden of. I wanted to earn it, and that meant it was a little harder for me to earn it and win my dad over, and that made me better anyway. But fortunately, I didn't throw too many interceptions that senior year, but it was always funny because it was more like in practice when you have a bad play and you kind of stop play, get chewed out, and then I walk over to Sassano puts his arm around me, and then in the playoffs after we beat Mishawaka, I had Rod Pollock coming around too, so I more or less had 3 quarterback coaches in practice for most of the playoffs. So let's just say there were plenty of people keeping their eye on my footwork, the mesh points with handoffs, the depth of the boot pass. So I had no shortage of mentorship that senior year.
Hashtag Geezy taught me. What's it all about?
That was my brother. Tim started Geezy taught me, but that has a little bit of a hip hop connotation. Kanye West had a phrase. His nickname's Yeezy, and he had a song about Yeezy taught me. That is probably not safe for children's ears, but Geezy cat and all those geese connotations is pretty easy to move it on to Geezy taught me, and you can take that as far as you want.
All right, good stuff.